Good morning and welcome to today's episode of Legally Direct or Legally Raven here. Today we are actually filming from Cleveland, Ohio, my home state, visiting my grandparents, and so hence the new background. So today we're going to talk a little bit about fallen trees. This is going to be a really quick and dirty video, but once again, this is question lay people ask when a tree falls on your property or it falls on your neighbor's property, who is responsible? So this came up because a friend of mine called me in a panic because her neighbor came to her. And let me show you the picture. Hold on, let me just get back to my screen share. Her neighbor came over to her and was like, your tree limb just fell on my shed and there was no damage, but this is what happened. And you're fortunate it didn't fall on my car. You're going to have to pay to get that removed. So my friend was kind of in a tizzy about it, of course. Well, I contacted another friend of mine whose husband just retired from a tree service company, and she said, "No, no, that's not the way it generally works. The way case law and insurance law has established it is that unless the homeowner was negligent." And that you have proof that you repeatedly told them, like, hey, that tree is going to fall. Hey, something's wrong with that tree. Hey, I think that tree has a disease, that kind of thing. You have to be able to prove it, or it has to be obvious that the landowner from which the tree is owned was negligent for them to be responsible for that happening. Otherwise, it's just considered an act of God, and it is your insurance that has to take care of it. Her neighbor, unfortunately, did go ahead and have it removed. She went ahead and contacted her city, which is in Bergen County, New Jersey. They also said, yes, this is true, here where you live, and that's what happened. So I thought, okay, just helping out a friend, this isn't really an issue. Well, then let me show you what happened. So we have a house in Texas that is rented out, and our tenants contacted us and they told us, hey, a tornado actually happened about a 2-minute walk from our house. They touched down. And so this is our house in the suburb of Austin, Texas, called Romerick. And as you can see, our beautiful tree there in the front, it knocked some shingles off and it narrowly missed the car. In this case, we didn't have to worry about the tree. We did have some other insurance claims to file, which I need to do a video about that, but understanding what your house insurance coverage is, because honestly, I had not read through my policy. Recently, we changed policies when we moved out the house and it became a rental. And so I need to go through the policy and try to understand it. And maybe that's something we can do together. Questions that people ask: what does my insurance policy mean? Right? That really is a contract of sorts with you and your insurance company to understand what you're paying for. So in this case, the fire department actually came around and cut up the tree, and then the city came around and they removed it. So that's great. And I wonder where the money from that comes from, if there's some type of disaster funding or what have you. But I am actually curious about that. So maybe that's another thing we can put on the list. But we did file a claim to get some things fixed on the roof, some of the plumbing, to get this, I don't know what you call it, but this tree well, I think it's called, fixed, and part of the fence came down between us and the neighbor. So those are all things that we're going to go ahead and we are going to repair. So now let's talk about Vermont a little bit, and let's just see, like, what is the law in Vermont. All right, so let me screen share once again, and go to my Google. So this is just telling us who pays when a tree falls on the limb of your car. The laws vary by state, but pretty much, unless the person is negligent, that's going to be the same thing. So we looked here about the Vermont statutes, and okay, so now we're back. So we went to, is it Justia? I really need to understand how to um, pronounce this website. I don't know, but I use it a lot. And so I just searched in here just for a little bit of how do you legal research. I looked at Vermont entry and looked up all the different things I could find about Vermont entry. I also went to the Vermont statutes here online, and we see crimes and criminal procedures, trees and plants. And so this talks about How do you value? So, any person who is entitled to damages pursuant to Section 3606 of this title and who is entitled to restitution for a violation of Section 3606A of this title may provide an assessment of the value based upon the kind, condition, location, and use of the timber cut down, destroyed, removed, injured, damaged, or carried away, or in an alternative may assess the value of the timber as follows. So, here is the value of the timber depending on the size of the tree. All right. So we see all this here. Um, Here's all the definitions here. Here's how you value it. And then when we go down here, it talks about, first of all, trespass, civil action, uh, in addition to any other civil liability or criminal penalty allowed by law. If a person cuts down, fells, destroys, removes, injures, damages, or carries away any timber placed or growing for any use or purpose whatsoever, or forest product standing, laying, or growing belonging to another person without permission from the owner of the timber or forest product, or cuts out, alters, or defaces the mark of a log or other valuable forest product, the party injured may recover of such a person in an action on this statute. So um, here we go. So there's a trespass issue here because they came on your property, and then trees have value. So when people put value on things, that when people have trees and things and somebody destroys it or removes it or alters it in some way, that person can use this part of the Virginia statute to try to get some restitution. And then here is some information about transporting trees on public highways. So that's what I could find about the Vermont statutes when it comes to trees. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk just a little bit about is one of the, I'm sorry, this is something completely different. I wanted to talk about here, this website just talks about tree removal in Vermont. They have a tree warden in every city, while the warden controls and care for the removal of trees on public property. His or her control extends into private property if there is an infestation that needs to be controlled. So this is a tree warden they have. This is something they have in Vermont. One of the things that was very interesting to me was this case um, about a tree in question. So this is not about a tree falling on a property, but this family here, the Alvarez family, they asked the court to do a preliminary injunction on their neighbors, Sheldon Katz and Claudia Berger. So what the situation was, so this case had a few different issues, but the main issues is that they lived in an area that used to be only, they were summer camps, so it was only for summer housing. Now it has year-round residents. They're close together on small lots, and Mr. Katz and Miss Berger, they wanted a permit for the construction of an addition on their home, right? Um, and it was granted. So separate and apart from the zoning issues in the dispute, they have neighbors over this large sugar maple tree, which stands just inside the Alvarez side of the boundary. So the tree belongs to the Alvarez family. It's about 65 years old and 65 feet tall, and the branches extend over both properties. And the root system extends under the ground of both properties. Well, the problem is the proposed improvements of the Katzberger resident include a two-story addition, which is designed to fit within the existing footprint of their backyard deck. The tree extends into the airspace where the addition is planned, and the tree's roots extend beneath the depth at a depth of 6 to 18 inches. The drip line from the outermost edge of the branches is approximately equal to the extent of the root system. The tree is so close to the property line that fully one half of the branches and one half of the root system are on the defendant side of the line. So the defendants being Mr. Katz and Miss Berger, who want to build the addition, half the branches and half the root systems is on their property. So in order to construct the rear addition, the defendants intend to build a concrete foundation, which will remove one half of the tree's root system. They intend to remove all the branches which extend across the property line. This will amount to cutting off one half of the tree's growth. So removing half of the branches and half of the root system will severely damage the tree. It is unlikely to survive this treatment. It will be vulnerable to rot and infection, and it will become unstable to high wind. If it falls down, it is most likely to fall onto the Alvarez's property. So they're gonna kind of cut apart half of the tree, making the tree unstable and then causing risk to the Alvarez property because the tree will fall on the property. So it says common law of trees in Vermont is uncomplicated and unsurprising. Trees which grow on a property owner's land belong to the property owner. The law recognizes that trees routinely spread across property lines, both in the air and underground. This is not considered a trespass since the long term use of air and ground through trespass will give rise to adverse possession. So the tree's been there using this air and using the ground for a long time. It adversely possesses it. So clearly, the growth of the tree across property lines does not accomplish that. Um, okay, am I right? This is not considered a trespass since the long term use of air and ground through trespass would give rise to adverse possession. And clearly, the growth of tree across property lines does not accomplish that. So, trees across property lines is not adverse possession. Okay. Tree owners, therefore, are permitted to allow their trees to grow into their neighbor's lots. You're allowed to do that. This permission has limits. The adjoining property owner is entitled to cut the branches and the roots that enter his land. There are many cases, including a page and a half collected by defendants, which support the long understood limitation on the tree owner's rights to plant a tree which grows over the property line. So you can do that. Defendants seek to take the principle permitting the cutting of branches a step further to the removal of one half of the limbs and roots. They propose to destroy their neighbor's tree because it stands in the way of their home expansion. Plaintiffs seek to limit the right to cut limbs and roots to cutting which does not endanger the health of the tree. So the Alvarezes are like, look, you can cut the limbs and you can cut the roots, but only to the point that it endangers the tree. Cutting half the limbs and half the roots will make the tree subject to disease, rotting, and could end up making it fall onto our property. So, no Vermont case addresses whether the right to self help is an absolute right, such that the holder of the right may cut so much of those parts of his neighbor's tree that the tree is effectively killed. Outside of Vermont, there is a split of authority regarding the application of the right of self help. So, this is what you have. So here we go. In most jurisdictions, the neighbor is entitled to remove those branches or roots by cutting them up to the property line without being liable for damage to the plant. Thus, if a neighbor removes roots invading his property from another's tree and the weakening of the root system causes the tree to collapse more easily in the wind, in most states, the neighbor is not liable. In other states, notably California, the right to remove invading roots at the boundary line is not absolute. It is limited by the principle of reasonableness. Neglect or malicious removal, not occasioned by damage from the plant, is not permitted. So you have two states. Some states say you have an absolute right, and other states, notably California, say you do not have an absolute right to remove the tree. So, yeah, so here we have a case here, Harding v. Uh, that's the Regional Cancer Treatment Center, and representative of the former view. In this case, there was evidence that one neighbor had cut encroaching roots, causing the tree to become more susceptible to wind damage. The court held that there were no facts to establish negligent excavation and affirmed the entry of summary judgment on the tree owner's negligent excavation claim. Another authority notes that, as to the right of self help, the neighbor may remove encroaching branches and roots even if such action causes substantial damage to the tree. In Brooks v. Patel, we have represented the California view. The trunk of the pine tree was entirely on Brooks's land, but its roots extended into Patel's yard. Patel hired a contractor to excavate along the length of his yard and sever the roots of the tree, the result of which the tree died, and Brooks was required to remove it at his own expense. Brooks sued Patel for negligence, destruction of timber, and trespass. Patel sought summary judgment on the grounds that he had an absolute right to sever the roots on his property without regard to the injuries of Brooks's land. The Court of Appeals held that summary judgment was inappropriate because there were disputed factual issues to be resolved. The court held that whatever right Patel had in the management of his own land, those rights are tempered by his duty to act reasonably. The California court quoted a variety of authorities for this proposition, including the following passage from Prosser and Keaton regarding the rights and duties of a landowner, where it says, he has a privilege uh, to make use of land for his own benefit and according to his own desires, which is the integral part of our whole system of private property. But it has been said many times that this privilege is qualified by due regard for the interests of others who may be affected by it. The possessor's right is therefore bounded by principles of reasonableness so as to cause no unreasonable risk of harm to others in the vicinity. All right, so there we have it. And that's what it is. So we have a lot of cases here of case law But there's the absence of guidance from the Vermont Supreme Court. The trial court must fashion a common rule for the purpose of this case, and in so doing, the court must strike a balance between the right of the owner to a healthy tree and the right of the adjoining landowner to the use of his property as he or she fits. The courts conclude that the rule in California, New York, and New Jersey, which limits the rights of an adjoining landowner to cut encroaching trees and hedges to actions which do not harm the health of the tree, is a better rule than the absolute privilege to cut encroaching branches and roots without regard to the health of the tree. A damaged tree is dangerous. A tree which has been destroyed is a great loss to its owner. The adjoining property owner's rights to maintain the status quo is protected by his right to trim and cut the incremental growth if it goes where he does not wish. All he has lost under the California and New York rule is the right to cut at once so deeply and irreversibly that the tree that into the tree that its health is compromised. All right. So here you go. The plaintiff also tried to say that you could just pay them. Um, and in order to obtain preliminary injunctive relief, plaintiffs must also establish a potential injury for which money damages are inadequate. The court rejects defendants' arguments that trees have a monetary value and that therefore the loss of the tree is better addressed through a damages award. Trees take a long time to establish themselves. They provide shade and protection, which cannot be replaced once they're removed. A mature tree, 65 foot, cannot be replaced with another specimen in any practical way. The tree has value to its owner, which cannot be measured by the replacement cost of a nursery specimen or its value as cord would. The court is satisfied that the plaintiffs have demonstrated a showing of harm, which is not reasonably addressed through the award of money damages. So, Mr. Katz and Miss Berger wanted to say, "Hey, we'll just pay you for the tree," and the court said, "No, you can't. There's not a monetary award that you can put on this tree that is going to really replace the value of a 65-year-old, 65-foot tree. Like you can't value it as just cordwood, and you also cannot say, oh, we're just going to plant a new baby tree. Like it's not going to be the same, right? Because 65 years. This really goes to show you that the value of time, right? Time is really a resource that money cannot buy. So, the conclusion: the court grants the plaintiff's motion for preliminary injunction and will issue the injunction at this time. The next step in this case will be to hear defendant's motion to dismiss, which is not yet ripe for dismission. I'm sorry, for decision, not dismission. So, there was one other thing here that they said that so some people said that, oh, the court has not yet based its ruling on the requirements of the South Burlington Land Development Regulations. Although the regulations prohibit the cutting of a tree the size of the tree involved, in this case without site plan approval, the court has not based its decision on the potential zoning violation for the reasons raised by the defendants. This is not the correct court for the enforcement of zoning laws. So this isn't the correct court for zoning laws. That needs to go to zoning court. So they didn't even address that. And so in this case, the owners of the tree, the Alvarez family, was able to put an injunction in to prevent the Katz and Berger from cutting the roots of the tree and cutting the branches to the standpoint that would make the tree unhealthy and dangerous. So here we go. That's what we have in the state of Vermont about trees. It was a really interesting case. I enjoyed reading it and enjoyed doing this video about it. And yeah, questions like people ask: when a tree falls, who pays for it? I hope you found the answer. Talk to you later. See you next time. Bye.